Hi everyone, my name is Jeremy. I bet you were expecting Elaine to be doing this, but nope. Today I'm going to be giving you everything that I think is wrong with Unison League from my perspective. I'm going to be starting these off with some of the more simple ones, and then I'm going to be ending on some of the ones I think require a little bit more discussion about them. The first thing I'm going to talk about is the constant grind to this game. Now, this is a mobile game, so this is something that's obviously going to be expected in that kind of a situation, but in this game I feel like it's extra prevalent just because of the way that they release their monster spawns. From my observation, they tend to release the higher cost monsters like one or two at a time, and they space it out over time. So that's one thing to keep people playing and keep people doing the spawns as they progress. But the issue with what happens is by the time you've collected some monsters of a particular cost, they've already moved on to the next cost jump, and you feel like you're constantly always behind the 8 ball because a lot of people are going to be able to spend money on the game and they're going to get those new next cost monsters. So my biggest personal experience that I can relate this to is back when 35 cost monsters were a thing, and I finally got my first 35 cost monster and I was so happy, and I'm like, oh, I'm finally going to have a monster that's on par with everybody else. And right after that they started releasing 36 cost monsters. They were already halfway through their 36 cost monster release before I finally got my second and third 35 cost monster, so I felt like I was always playing catch up. So how do they fix this? I can understand why they do this from a marketing perspective. It's a lot easier to make a banner that says new 36 cost monster when everybody else has 35 cost monsters, just using those numbers as an example. But there is kind of a bad power creep factor to the game, and it adds to the grind. Obviously they want you to grind, they want to make money, they want people to spend money on gems, but how do they fix this from a player experience perspective? I feel like the best way to fix it would be to just vary the abilities of the monsters. So you can have different monsters with different abilities that are all varied and used in different strategical purposes when they're all staying relatively the same cost. You don't have to constantly be increasing the cost just for that kind of bump of dopamine that everybody gets when they see a banner that's got a new cost number on it. This would allow the monsters to be relatively close to each other in terms of their stats, but still have a lot of different abilities that can be used in different situations and apply to a lot of different builds. This leads pretty easily into my next point, which is the free-to-play versus whale balance. Most mobile games are obviously going to get the vast majority of their money from whales because they're the people that are going to spend a lot of money, like thousands of dollars, on buying gems and doing spawns and things like that. But the majority of your players are going to be free-to-play or close to free-to-play players, and those are the ones that you honestly need to balance the game around because it's going to be the majority of them. With the current system how it is, it ends up with the whales just being able to kind of buy gems and do spawns over and over again in the beginning whenever new monsters come out, and they just get them because the drop rates are so minuscule that it's designed around people spending money on getting gems and performing the spawns over and over again. I experience that when I do treasure spawns. I will save up 1,300 gems, perform the spawn, and I'll get one copy of the new monster. My answer to this: raise the drop rates and maybe limit the amount of time people can perform certain spawns. That would ensure that players that have limited resources and can only perform the spawns a certain amount of times would be able to have a good chance at getting those monsters. It doesn't completely eliminate the advantage that whales have, because if multiple spawns are out at once, the limited resource players might have to pick and choose which ones they can actually perform. Meanwhile, the whales would be able to perform all of the spawns, so they'd have a better shot with the higher drop rates to be able to actually get a full assortment of monsters. So the advantage doesn't disappear, but it still allows the free-to-play player and the limited pay player to experience a little bit more of the game and get some of those higher end monsters without having to waste all of their gems potentially that they saved up for months and potentially not get anything. My third thing that I think is wrong with Unison League is the quests are boring. They're pretty much all the same, and the monster abilities, outside of reflect monsters, there isn't really any kind of different strategy for fighting any of them. I'm not really sure how you would fix this outside of revamping the ability system in general, because a lot of the abilities that you're going to have as a player aren't going to have a ton of different effects on the monsters. There are ones that are going to have NPC effects and PC effects, and I feel like those are kind of there more as fluff than anything because a lot of them don't really have a noticeable effect on the monsters. Maybe one way to add a little bit of variety to this quest system would be to maybe maybe put you up against opposing parties. So it would be like player abilities that you'd be fighting against. So it would be like an opposing guild or something like that. These essentially would be NPC players that are playing player characters of different classes. So you can kind of get practice towards going into guild battle and facing other players. Along with having these like rival NPC parties, you'd probably have to improve the AI system, which I'm going to talk about a little bit in one of my other points. My next point is raid. I absolutely hate raid. I haven't been shy about that in other videos that we've done, little discussion videos on the game. I think raid is pointless. We play it and we just basically end up against monsters that are going to status affect us over and over and over again, and we can't do anything besides Unison. And in raid, you actually get punished for matching your monsters, which is different from any other part of the game because it ends up wasting more of your time, and it's not enough of a benefit to get the Unison. This ends up causing a problem with guilds that don't have all of their players active all at the same time, and I think that's kind of unreasonable to expect all of your players to be active at a specific time out of the day, even if you get to choose what that window is. I think raid could be fixed by making it into something like a gauntlet. Maybe you're matched up against guild members from guilds that are around your level in terms of their average gear scores, and you have one-on-one fights that you opt into. So maybe your guild opts in 5 people per raid, and you list yourself as active, so you're kind of committing to being active during those times. A handful of guilds are matched up, and they match up against each other one-on-one, and each player in their one-on-one match gains points, and your cumulative points for the day will be the thing that determines whether or not you win raid. I think that would be something that kind of combines some stuff from Guild Battle, some stuff from Battle Coliseum, and it's going to be more entertaining and more fun and more engaging than going up against monsters that are just going to confuse you and paralyze you and slow you down and do all these things to kind of just stall it out. My last point that I'm going to talk about is Guild Battle in general. This is something that I probably have the most experience out of anything that I do with the game because I do it at least 2 times a day or so. I'm usually trying to hit all 3, but you know, I have a job. So I will participate in Guild Battle, and it basically amounts to getting your Unison gauge full as quickly as possible and hitting Unison. One of the issues that I have with this system is you could be significantly better than the other team in your one-on-one fights when you're actually fighting outside of Unison battles, but if you throw Unison monsters that happen to be the wrong element and they happen to guess right and throw the right ones, then you could lose the entire guild battle just based off losing that first Unison battle. In the current game how it is, I don't see how you fix this because the best strategy to win guild battle is to cheer up and throw your monsters. You'd have to make things in the guild battle itself outside of Unison more entertaining, so there's a little bit more strategy to it besides just going full bore with as many abilities as possible to build up your Unison gauge. Some things that I will say are a little bit strategic is when mages try to use ancient spell and you have to redirect your attacks towards hitting them to make sure that they can't get it off. Or if you have a rook on your team and the rook can see a lot of attacks coming in and they throw up that protection to protect the rest of their team. There are some things that have some strategy to them, but most of it's just ability spamming when you have enough cost to do so. A lot of this would come down to kind of having to overhaul the abilities so there's more interaction between them, where you kind of have more things that are based on timing and certain situations and things like that. It's probably not something that they're going to do, but there are some fixes to Guild Battle that you can make that would immediately improve the experience, like improving the AI. I'm not a mobile game developer, but that can't be too hard to move some different values to make them do different things when the AI is controlling characters. Because if you have a cleric that is on your team and ends up getting taken over by the CPU when either the player doesn't show up or they get disconnected or something like that, they will stand there and they won't heal. They won't heal the right people. They'll send multi-heals that are like 3-person heals to a person that's on the end, so only 2 people get it. They will try to sit there and attack with their basic attack over healing, and I don't really understand why it's rigged up like that. I know it would be a little bit of class-specific programming to make them kind of react how they're supposed to, but that would greatly improve the experience for guilds that can't have everybody show up all the time. So there you have it. That's everything I think is wrong with Unison League from my perspective right now. It ended up turning into a top 5. Everybody likes top 5s, right? When I come up with more things, maybe I'll make a follow-up video with this, or maybe if I come up with some more detailed solutions, I'll also follow this up with a part 2. If you like what you saw here today, please hit that like button. Leave a comment down below about all the things that you don't like about Unison League and maybe some suggestions on how to fix them, or if you have any critiques on anything that I said. Subscribe to the channel for more Unison content and maybe check out some of our board game and book reviews. Hit that notification bell so you know what's up, and until next time, I'll catch you in the league.